Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jay Cohn.
And I'm Jeanelle Slade. A murder investigation is underway in Hardin tonight, where one of 3 women beat with a frying pan has died.
Now, the assault happened earlier this month, leaving the victim hospitalized for more than 2 weeks.
On Saturday, that victim died from her injuries.
Q2's Asia Gore broke this story today and joins us now with more of the details. Asia.
Jane Jeanelle, the suspect has already been charged with 3 counts of felony assault, but tomorrow he'll face a new charge of deliberate homicide. 22-year-old James Brian is being held at the Bighorn County Jail on a $1 million bond. The sheriff's office first received a report February 8th of an assault at a Hardin trailer. A witness told deputies Brian bragged to her that he, quote, laid 3 girls out with a frying pan. The witness said she found all 3 women at the trailer unconscious. When deputies arrived, they found one victim with a bloody face. Another was conscious at first, but then passed out on the couch. That victim, a woman in her 40s, was transported to a Billings hospital and placed on life support. She died from her injuries Saturday night. A motive for the assault was not identified in court documents. The victim's name has not been released. Jane Jeanelle.
Thanks, Asia.
A Busby man who was convicted at trial of beating and burning a Crow Agency woman to death back in 2016 is asking for a new trial.
Attorneys for 20-year-old Demario Sanchez recently filed that request, citing tainted witness testimony and new evidence. A jury found Sanchez guilty of first-degree murder in December for the death of Roy Lynn Ride's horse. A psychologist was the solo defense witness. She testified that Sanchez did not have the mental capacity to lead a group in that murder.
But shortly after the trial ended, both sides learned that the doctor was facing charges for stealing prescription pills. And late last month, defense attorneys learned about the existence of a cell phone that allegedly contains text messages about the night in question.
That phone belonged to one of the witnesses. The judge has yet to rule on the request for a new trial.
President Trump today met with the nation's governors at the White House. The key topic, gun control, arming teachers, and school safety. Montana Governor Steve Bullock was able to question the president about arming teachers and at the time reflected on his own personal loss from a school shooting.
My approach it as a gun owner. That 11-year-old son got his first deer this past fall.
He's a good boy.
I approach it as a victim. I had a nephew shot and killed, an 11-year-old on a playground. 43 times since I've been governor, been asked to lower the flags. 12 of them have been for mass shootings in the last 5 years. It's much more, as I think you recognize, in just carrying concealed, that they have that training that I, as a parent, can say that this person, under pressure, will know what to do with a firearm before we start introducing the firearms into our schools.
You mentioned 2 words, under pressure. And a lot of people never really know what that means because, you know, they train a whole life. Look at Peterson. Look what he did in Broward, where he thought he was probably a brave guy, but he wasn't a brave guy. Under pressure, he choked, and other people choked. I mean, a lot of people choked in that case.
Washington Governor Jay Inslee also questioned the president on the wisdom of arming teachers in the classroom and went on to scold the president, saying, quote, we need a little less tweeting and a little more listening.
The local students staging a walkout as part of a nationwide movement to remember the victims of the Florida school shooting earlier this month hope to do so with support of school administration. Students from Billings Senior and West High say they hope to work with their schools, the district, and Billings Police to make sure things go smoothly. They are working to get the message across that this is an issue everyone can get behind.
I think we're trying to get across the point that it is bipartisan. You know, like, we aren't trying to have like it be a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. You know, it's everyone should be concerned about the violence in schools and the gun. Like, we need to have a change because obviously it's not working what we're doing right now.
Superintendent Terry Bauk is expected to address the issue tonight at the school board meeting. We will let you know what Bauk has to say tonight at 10 o'clock.
And a big decision tonight for the Lockwood School Board as the Lockwood School District will discuss a possible future bond election for some $50 million that could pave the way for a new Lockwood High School. Tonight's discussion comes after Lockwood residents voted back in November to move forward with plans to build a high school in the district. Lockwood's current K-8 district has a 2-year time frame to pass a bond to expand the district to K-12. Now, tonight's meeting in Lockwood starts at 6 p.m. We'll tell you what the board decides tonight at 10.
The Bullock administration must move to make millions of dollars in budget cuts to human services for the disabled here in Montana. But today, some parents and their advocates implored the governor to stop at least some of those cuts. MTN's Mike Dennison reports from Helena.
The Bullock administration is cutting state funding for human services by $49 million to meet a budget shortfall caused by less than expected tax revenue. But family members and advocates for the disabled say the revenue may be bouncing back and ask why the administration shouldn't back off on at least some of the cuts.
Because the revenues are so much better than they were before, we'd like to hear what the governor has to say about restoring the cuts and what his plans are to restore these essential services.
Vicki LaFawn Smith of East Helena has 2 grown sons with cerebral palsy who need help eating, bathing, getting dressed, and doing other basic tasks. She says she and others are worried the cuts could undermine or close the nonprofit companies that provide services like those for her sons, Matthew and Christopher.
We need them to help us. If we don't have them, then what? Who will take care of the Matthews and Christophers in Montana?
But the governor's budget director says his office doesn't believe the bump in revenue the past 2 months is sustainable. Dan Villa also notes that under a law passed by the Republican-controlled legislature last November, Governor Bullock can't use higher revenue to undo the cuts until this summer at the earliest. Yet parents and advocates who spoke Monday aren't convinced. They're urging the Democratic governor and his administration to find a way to find the money to offset some of the cuts.
I say, Governor Bullock, please help me. Please help us do our very best for all Montanans with disabilities, their families, and all those who take care of them. We are a team. We are the village.
Mike Dennison, MTN News, Helena.
Now, Mike tells us the legislature approved the level of cuts last November, but the administration decides where those cuts will take place.
A retired Yellowstone County Justice of the Peace now being sued for unlawfully ordering a man's arrest over his immigration status.
That's the claim filed by Miguel Hernandez against former Judge Pedro Hernandez. The plaintiff was attending a court hearing with his wife when the woman's cousin told the judge Miguel Hernandez was in the country illegally. Hernandez allegedly ordered the man's arrest, and he was then held at a detention center in Tacoma, Washington for nearly 3 months.
Now, this lawsuit contends that state judges do not have the authority to uphold immigration law because that is a federal issue.
Now, the man, who is married to a Billings woman, was eventually released and the case against him was dismissed.
And now Miguel Hernandez is seeking an unspecified amount of damages.
With the Winter Olympics in the books, the focus now moves to who will host the 2026 games.
Q2's Dustin Kleeman joining us now with the chance that Bozeman might be in the mix as a potential host city. Dustin.
Good evening, Jay and Jeanelle. While Bozeman and Big Sky could eye a shot at one day hosting the Winter Olympics, currently the U.S. Olympic Committee has no plans to bid on 2026. A group pushed for Bozeman to be considered back in 2015, and we reached out to them today but have yet to hear back. Los Angeles secured 2028, so the USOC is focused on helping them preparation as well as get ready for the Summer Games. In the hunt for 2030, Denver, Reno, and Salt Lake City. You remember Salt Lake was the last time U.S. hosted an Olympic Games back in 2002. Only Switzerland has announced its intention to place a bid and host for that in 2026 after the 2022 Games in Beijing. Turkey also expressing interest in 2026. Now, cities and countries interested in hosting must declare their interest by March 31st. Guys?
All right, thanks, Dustin.
Coming up on tonight's 5:30 News, hop on board this week's Q2 Rewind as we take you back to the days when buses ruled the road and were a popular way to travel the state and country.
And later in sports, some tough news for former West football standout Dylan Donahue, the Jets linebacker charged with DUI after a head-on crash.
And coming up in the weather, we saw some cloudy skies, even a few flurries, but the temperatures, that actually warmed up into the mid-30s today. Is this some foreshadowing of things to come? We'll talk about it coming up.
You're watching MTN News with Jay Cohn and Jeanelle Slade. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire and sports with Scott Green.